The last photograph ever taken of my whole family together was taken at my wife's funeral. If you look closely at the right-hand corner of that picture, you will see a very small hand holding tight to mine. That hand belongs to Sam. He was 7 years old. Not one person in that church knew who he was, including my own 2 grown children. 4 months later, my daughter stood in the middle of her living room, blocking my path with both arms stretched out like a gate, and she spoke to me in a voice I had never heard from her in 38 years of being her father. She said, "Dad, you are not taking one more step until you tell this family who that boy is. He's yours, isn't he? You cheated on Mom." What my daughter did not know was that at that exact moment, sitting in the trunk of my car, there was a folder about 2 inches thick. That folder proved that her husband had forged my signature. Not once, twice. It proved he was quietly moving my house into the name of a company he had created himself. And it proved he had just filed a petition with the county court asking a judge to declare me mentally incompetent. In plain English, asking the court to certify that I was a confused old man. I had kept my silence for 4 months. That night, I decided I was done being silent. My name is Ray Sokol. I am 66 years old, and I live in Kettering, a quiet suburb of Dayton, Ohio. Before I retired 3 years ago, I spent 34 years as a fraud investigator for a large insurance company headquartered up in Columbus. They called our department the Special Investigations Unit. My job, in plain terms, was to look at a piece of paper and know exactly where it was lying, to look at a signature and know whose hand had really written it, to look at a file that was clean and perfect and smell the thing that had been staged. 34 years, tens of thousands of files. I thought I had seen every kind of lie a human being could dream up. What I never imagined was that the last file of my life would carry my daughter's married name, and that the last forged signature I would ever have to expose would be my own. Before I tell you what happened when I opened that folder in front of my whole family, I want to know one thing. Where are you watching this from? Write it down below. I read every single comment. And believe me, by the time this story is over, you are going to have a lot more to say than the name of a town. To understand what happened, you first have to know about Ellie. Eleanor Sokol, my wife. We were married 41 years. The wedding was at a little Polish parish on the east side of Dayton, where her grandfather had been an usher for 20 years. The whole family danced polkas until nearly midnight, and the 3-layer wedding cake her aunt made collapsed 1 full layer right before the cutting. Ellie laughed so hard she had to sit down. For the rest of our lives, whenever something in the house broke, she would say the same thing. "It's fine. Our wedding cake fell over and we fixed that. We can fix anything." Ellie was a nurse for 30 years in the newborn intensive care unit at Miami Valley Hospital. 30 years of holding babies born so early they fit in the palm of one grown hand. 30 years standing beside those incubators, watching over the uneven breathing of little souls the world hadn't even learned the names of yet. She used to tell me that in that unit, there was no such thing as a stranger's child. Every baby in there was hers. I'm telling you that detail now because later on you're going to understand it was never just a nice thing to say. Ellie had one habit the whole family knew about, and the whole family had been driven half crazy by at one time or another. She labeled everything. And I mean everything. The screw boxes in the garage had labels. The spice jars in the kitchen had labels. Even the phone chargers had a little strip of tape that said, "Raise cord, hands off." All of it written in that slanted, tilting handwriting of hers, the kind of handwriting anybody in this family could recognize in half a second from across a room. To this day, every time I open a kitchen drawer, I see her handwriting on every container. Some days, that is the only reason I open the drawer. In August of the year before last, Ellie started losing weight. She said food just didn't taste right lately. By the middle of September, the doctor called us both into his office, closed the door, and said the words, "No married couple on this earth ever wants to hear. Pancreatic cancer, late stage." From the day we sat in that office to the day I stood beside her casket, the whole thing took 7 months. Now, I need to tell you about something I paid no attention to at the time. For about 2 years before she got sick, once a month, on a Saturday morning, Ellie would take the car and drive off early. She'd say she was going to a farmer's market a ways out, or meeting up with some of her old nurse friends. She'd come home in the late afternoon, and she was always happy in this strange, particular way. Not loud happy, quiet happy. Like somebody had lit a small lamp somewhere behind her eyes. One time I teased her, I said, "You going to see a boyfriend? Coming home glowing like that." Ellie laughed, kissed me on the forehead, and said, "You just wait, Ray Sokol. One day I'll tell you." I waited, and she did tell me. She just told me in a way that not one of us could ever have seen coming. The second person you need to know is Nicole, my daughter. 38 years old, teaches 4th grade at a public school over in Beaver Creek. Nicole is the kind of teacher who knows the names of the parents of all 26 kids in her class, and knows which kid is allergic to peanuts and which kid's folks just split up so she can go a little easier on him. She got that from her mother, that way of caring about people more than the job requires. Nicole and her mom were close in a way that I, a man who spent his whole life with paperwork, could only stand back and watch with a kind of gentle envy. Every single evening, at 8 o'clock on the dot, the phone in our house would ring. It was Nicole calling her mother. Some nights they talked for an hour. Some nights it was 3 sentences. "Hi, Mom, it's me. Hi, honey. Okay, love you, going to bed." But at 8 o'clock, that phone rang. After 40-some years with Ellie, I could have set my watch by that phone call. After Ellie passed, there was an evening I was sitting in the kitchen, and at 8 o'clock sharp, I caught myself looking over at the phone. It doesn't ring anymore. I imagine Nicole had evenings just like that over at her house. And I believe it was evenings like those that slowly turned my daughter's grief into something else. Into dry kindling. Just waiting on a match. Nicole has been married 9 years. 2 kids, Emma, who is 6, and Jack, who is 4. 2 grandchildren Ellie loved so much, she kept a separate cookie tin for each of them, with their names on the labels. And Nicole's husband is Derek Hayes. Derek is 41, a financial advisor with a wealth management firm that has a branch office in downtown Dayton. Fully licensed, properly registered with the federal securities regulators, the whole 9 yards. Derek is the kind of man who gives you a firm handshake, remembers your team, asks about exactly the thing you've been worried about, and never once lets you get your wallet out for the coffee. In 9 years, I never saw him show up late to a single family dinner. Ellie said something about him once. She said, "That Derek is polished. So polished that sometimes I can't tell what's underneath the shine." I laughed when she said it. I'm not laughing anymore. 2 years ago, Derek offered to look over our retirement accounts. "Free of charge, Dad. We're family." He sat at my dining room table for a whole afternoon, taking careful notes, complimenting me on how tidy I kept everything. At the time, I was touched. Looking back now, I understand one simple thing. After that afternoon, Derek knew exactly what I had, exactly where it was, and exactly whose name was on it. The house on Ashbury Lane, paid off 9 years ago, worth about $385,000. The pension, the savings, all of it. And here is the part I didn't learn until much later, but I'm going to tell you right now so you can watch everything that's coming in the right light. That whole time, Derek was sitting on a hole of nearly $240,000. He had borrowed heavily to buy 3 short-term rental cabins down in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, right at the top of the market. Then the market turned. The bookings dried up. The loan payments did not. Add to that a margin loss in his brokerage account that he had hidden from everybody. His wife didn't know. His firm didn't know. And to patch that hole temporarily, Derek had taken a hard money loan from a private lender, secured by nothing but a promise. And that promise, word for word, according to what came out later, was this: "My wife has an inheritance coming. Her folks are getting up there, and the house and the assets are all squared away." Which means that in Derek's mind, everything Ellie and I owned had already been counted as his money. He was just waiting on the calendar. Then Ellie died first, and 5 days after her funeral, I brought home a 7-year-old boy that nobody could account for. Put yourself in Derek's shoes for a second. A man drowning in debt, who has already pawned his future against his wife's inheritance, suddenly watches a brand new variable walk into the middle of the board. A child. A child who could be a secret son, could be an heir, could be anything at all. The slice of pie he had promised his lender suddenly had a great big question mark sitting on top of it. People like to think crimes inside a family start with greed. After 34 years in my line of work, I'll tell you it's usually not greed, it's panic. Greed knows how to wait. Panic does not. There's one more of my children to meet. My son Brian, 33, a software engineer out in Denver. Brian is the gentle one, lives far away, and has a habit that runs like a machine. Every Sunday, without fail, he calls home, and the call lasts almost exactly 11 minutes. Year in, year out. Ellie used to tease him, she'd say, "You call your parents like you're filing a weekly report." Brian would argue, "Well, I say what I've got to say, and then I'm done." That number, 11 minutes, I want you to hold on to it. It is going to come back around in this story, in a place I never saw coming. And finally, there's Dale Prucha, my fishing buddy of 29 years. Dale is 67, a retired union electrician, and the owner of 3 boats, not one of which floats in any complete sense of the word. Dale is the kind of friend who doesn't ask a lot of questions. "Whatever you need, I'm here." That's the whole speech. In the months ahead, that speech was going to be worth more to me than any piece of paper in my folder. Now let me tell you about Ellie's last night. It was the end of March, in a hospice room with soft yellow light. Ellie was very weak by then, but her mind stayed sharp in a way that almost didn't seem fair, like the body was letting go and the will hadn't gotten the memo. She took my hand and told me to lean in close. She made me promise her 2 things. The first promise, I'm going to tell you about later. Not because I'm playing games with you, because that promise itself is the reason this story has to be told in this exact order. You'll understand when we get there. The second promise, Ellie put it like this: "No matter what happens, you cannot let anyone," and she stopped and looked me dead in the eye and pressed down on every word, "anyone, make you break the first promise before it's time. People will ask. People will get angry. Let them be angry at you. You can carry that. He can't." I didn't fully understand who he was yet. I just promised. 3 days later, Ellie slipped away, peacefully, near dawn, while I was holding her hand and telling her the story of the wedding cake falling over, one more time. The funeral was on a windy Thursday, and 5 days after the funeral, I did the thing that lit the fuse on this entire story. I left the house at 5 in the morning, 6 hours out, 6 hours back. When I stepped out of the car in front of my own house, just as it was getting dark, I was carrying a small blue suitcase, and walking beside me was a 7-year-old boy, brown-haired, skinny, hugging a dinosaur backpack against his chest. He held that backpack the way a man holds a life preserver in open water. Nicole was at my house that day, sorting through some of her mother's things. She stood frozen on the front step, looking at the boy, then looking at me. I said the one sentence I had rehearsed for 6 hours of driving. "His name is Sam. He's going to live here now. I will explain everything, when I can," Nicole asked, and her voice wasn't angry yet, just lost. "When you can." "When is that, Dad?" I said. "I don't know yet, but I'm asking you to trust me." That night, Brian called from Denver, days ahead of his usual Sunday schedule, and Derek didn't call me at all. It was only much later that I learned what he did instead. That very same week, he started calling other people, asking very soft, very skillful little questions. To my cousin, to my neighbor, even to the woman who used to do my taxes. Not one of those questions was an accusation. Every single one of them was just a question. 34 years on the job taught me something about liars. The most dangerous liar is not the one who invents the story. It's the one who only plants the questions, then steps back, and lets everybody else invent the story for him. Derek was the second kind. The first family dinner with Sam at the table was the first Sunday in April. And I'll be honest with you, I have attended funerals with a better atmosphere than that dinner. Nicole made her mother's chicken and dumplings, and through the entire meal she looked at me maybe twice. Emma and Jack, on the other hand, well, little kids don't know how to be suspicious. The 2 of them fought over who got to show Sam the plastic dog that does backflips. Sam sat very still, the dinosaur backpack parked right under his feet, glancing down every so often to make sure it was still there. He ate quietly, carefully, the whole meal, like a boy who was afraid that if he chewed too loud, somebody might remember he didn't belong there. When the coffee came out, Nicole set her cup down and asked me straight out, in front of everybody, "Dad, who is he?" I said, "I told you. I will explain when I can." Nicole looked at me for a long, long moment. Then she said, quiet and cold, "Mom has been gone less than a month. You bring home a child with no name, no paperwork you'll show anybody, and you tell your family to wait. Do you have any idea how that looks?" I knew how it looked. I knew better than anyone in that room. But all I could say was, "I know, and I'm still asking you to wait." On the drive home that night, in their car, a conversation took place that Nicole would not repeat to me until almost a year later. And when she did, she recited it word for word, because she said she had never been able to get it out of her head. Derek was driving, eyes on the road, and he spoke in that calm, level, financial advisor voice of his. He said, "I am not saying your father had an affair. I would never say that. I'm only asking you one question. An innocent man, what exactly does he have to hide? You see how that works. Not one word of accusation, just a question." Then he went silent for the rest of the drive and let the question do the rest of the work all by itself, inside his wife's head, all that night, and for many nights after. Midweek, it was Brian's turn. My boy called me from Denver, and for the first time in his life, the call did not last 11 minutes. It lasted about 40 seconds. Brian said, "Dad, one question. Yes or no is fine. Is that boy your son?" I said, "No." Brian said, "Then who is he?" I said, "I can't tell you yet." The other end of the line went quiet for about 3 seconds. Then Brian said, "Bye, Dad," and hung up. I stood there in my kitchen, holding the phone, and for the first time I understood the particular bitterness of the spot I was standing in. I had just told the truth, the 100% truth, and nobody believed me. Because my truth came with no proof, while the lie spreading through my family needed no proof at all. All it needed was an empty space. And I was the one who had built the empty space with my own 2 hands. In my old line of work, there's a saying the old investigators pass down to the rookies. Every file has a gap in it. Stand watch over the gap, and sooner or later you'll meet whoever comes to fill it. I had created the biggest gap of my life, and right on schedule somebody came to fill it. The first warning sign arrived at the end of April, dressed up as a thoughtful phone call. Derek called me on a Tuesday evening. His voice was so warm you could have bottled it and sold it. He said, "Dad, since we lost Mom, I keep thinking about it. The house, the will, the accounts, everything is sitting in your name alone now. I do this for a living, and I'm telling you, that's a risky way to leave things. Why don't you let me help you roll it all into a living trust? Update the will while we're at it. No charge, we're family." I thanked him and said I'd think it over. After I hung up, I sat there a while. Not because I was suspicious. I wasn't suspicious of anything yet, but out of nowhere, I remembered what Ellie had said, that Derek is polished. The second warning sign came in the middle of May, and this one was strange enough that I told Dale about it like it was a joke. One morning, the house phone rang. On the other end was a receptionist with a very pleasant voice, calling from a neurology clinic down in Centerville. She said, "I'm calling to confirm the cognitive evaluation appointment for Mr. Raymond Sokol this Thursday at 9 a.m. I said, "Ma'am, I never made any appointment like that." She said, "It shows here that a family member scheduled it on your behalf." I laughed. I told her she must have the wrong Sokol. It's not that rare a name around Ohio. She apologized. I hung up, and I forgot about the whole thing before lunch. Now, you, listening to this, you know more than I knew that morning. You know there was no other Sokol. You know that somebody was quietly assembling a file, and the main character of that file was a grieving old widower, so far gone in his grief that he'd brought home a strange child and couldn't explain it to a single soul. A file where every true thing I did got rotated just a few degrees until it turned into a symptom. And me, the man of the hour, I was standing in my kitchen laughing about a wrong number. The third warning sign came in June, and this is where the old professional nose started to twitch. Mail started going missing from my box. Not all of it. Selectively. The monthly statement from Fifth Third Bank never showed. Then a letter from the Montgomery County Probate Court regarding Sam's guardianship case never showed either. I only knew it existed because the law office called asking why I hadn't responded. A normal person blames the post office. 3 months earlier, I would have blamed the post office myself. But 34 years leaves certain sentences carved into a man's head, and that evening one of them lit up like a dashboard warning. One missing document is an accident. Two missing documents of the same kind is a behavior. That night I went upstairs, opened my desk drawer, and took out something I had put away the day I retired. My leather notebook, the kind I carried for 34 years, writing down every detail of every case, because in a courtroom memory is the first thing they break, but a notebook with the right dates on it stands its ground. On the first page, I wrote the date, and one line, beginning a record of unusual events. No conclusions. Just the record. People ask me sometimes, why didn't you raise the roof right then? Because the job teaches you not to. The animal that makes noise is the animal that already smells you. If you want to know which trail he's using, you let him believe the woods are still quiet. And the fourth warning sign, the last one, arrived on the 4th of July at the cookout in Nicole's backyard. It was a beautiful day. Charcoal smoke drifting, kids running through the sprinkler. Sam played, really played, with Emma and Jack for the first time, and there was a moment when I stood watching those 3 soaked kids rolling in the grass laughing, and I let myself think, maybe this all heals on its own. Then I went into the garage looking for the extra cooler. The garage door was open a crack. Inside, Derek stood with his back to me, phone pressed to his ear, and his voice was not the bottled warmth voice anymore. It was low and fast, and I stood behind that door and heard every word. He said, "You need to calm down. I told you it's there. The house alone is free and clear. That's close to 400 by itself, plus the other accounts on top of it." A pause, while whoever it was said something, and then Derek said the sentence I will carry to my grave. "No, the old man is not the problem. With old people, there is always a process for that. With old people, there is always a process for that." I stood behind that door, holding a cooler full of ice against my chest, and I did the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. I did not push that door open. I turned around, walked back out to the yard, set the cooler down by the table, took my seat next to Sam, cut his hot dog into 3 pieces the way he likes it, and I smiled. I smiled for the remaining 3 hours of that party. I complimented Derek on his ribs. I clapped him on the shoulder on my way out. My hands did not shake that day. They just went very still. And I knew that stillness well, from all the working years. It's the stillness that comes over you when a file stops being a suspicion and becomes a case. The stillness of a man who has just stopped being the victim and started being the investigator. That night, after Sam was asleep, I opened the leather notebook and wrote down the garage sentence word for word, with the date, the time, and the circumstances. Then I sat for a long while, looking at the page. Because you see, a sentence is not evidence. Which house, what process, said to whom, I couldn't prove any of it. If I blew up right then, I would hand Derek the exact thing he wanted. The image of a paranoid old man, raving at a family cookout that his son-in-law was out to get him. One more page for his file. No. What I needed was paper. There's a saying in my old trade, words fly away, paper stays put, and a greedy man always has to touch the paper eventually. What I did not expect was how fast the paper would come find me. And I certainly did not expect that when it came, it wouldn't be a single thread. It would be a whole rope, already knotted into a noose, with my name written on the tag. In the middle of July, I walked into the Fifth Third branch on Far Hills Avenue. The reason was as ordinary as it gets. Sam's guardianship case needed lawyer money, and I wanted to split off part of a savings account into its own account for those costs. Keep the books clean. The man who sat down with me was Tom Brzezinski, the branch manager, who has known me 9 years. Tom is the kind of banker who remembers the name of your dog. He poured me a cup of coffee, asked how Sam was settling in, and turned to his keyboard. And then Tom's hands stopped on the keys. I have witnessed that exact moment hundreds of times in my life, only always from the other side of the desk. The moment a person is reading a screen and their face changes time zones. Tom looked at the screen, looked at me, looked back at the screen. When he spoke, his voice had slowed way down. He said, "Ray, you just told me you wanted to move this money yourself. So I take it you know about this power of attorney." I said, "What power of attorney?" Tom went silent for exactly 1 breath. And then he did the thing I will be grateful for until the day I die. He turned the monitor around to face me. On that screen was the record of a full power of attorney. The principal, Raymond Sokol. Me, the agent, with complete authority over banking, real estate, and medical decisions, Derek Hayes. Date of execution, April 11th. April the 11th. I sat there and did the arithmetic you may be doing in your own head right now. Ellie passed at the end of March, which means my son-in-law signed my name to that document before my wife had been in the ground 6 weeks. He couldn't even wait for the first flowers on her grave to die back. Tom printed me a copy. I laid it on the desk, took out my reading glasses, and did the thing I have done my entire life. You need to understand something about signatures. Everybody thinks forging a signature is about drawing the picture right. It is not. A signature is not a picture. A signature is emotion, a rhythm. The real writer writes with the habit of a lifetime. The forger writes with care. And care, under a magnifying glass, looks nothing like habit. The letter R in my name, when I sign it, the pen rests twice. Once at the foot of the letter, once before the loop closes. 60 years it's been that way, ever since my 5th grade teacher made me practice a signature fit for a grown man. The R on this paper rested once. The strokes were round, even prettier than my signature has ever looked on my best day. Pretty in a diligent sort of way. 34 years in the business, that was all I needed to see. But I kept looking anyway, because I wanted to be 100% certain before I allowed my heart to accept what my head already knew. That somebody in my own family had sat down at a table, laid out a sheet of paper, and practiced writing my name until they got good at it. I thanked Tom, asked him to leave the file exactly as it was for now, and told him I would be back with a lawyer. Tom walked me to the door, and when we shook hands, he held on a beat longer than usual. He said, quietly, "Ray, 9 years I've sat across that desk from you, and your head is sharper than most of the 30-year-olds I know. Whatever you need me to put in writing, you say the word. There are sentences people say to you on the exact day you need to hear them most. That one from Tom was one of those sentences. From the bank, I drove straight to the Montgomery County Recorder's office. I wanted the filed original in my own 2 hands. The records clerk brought me the file. 4 pages. My name typed clean across the top. That diligent signature at the bottom. And a notary stamp, purple ink, a perfect circle, bearing the name of a notary public, Sharon Delgado. I have never met anyone named Sharon Delgado in my life. Now, here is the part I want you to listen to carefully. Because if some terrible day you find yourself standing where I stood, this one detail could save you. In the state of Ohio, same as most states, the list of commissioned notaries is a public record. Anybody can look it up, right on the Secretary of State's website, free of charge in about 3 minutes. I stood right there at the counter, took out my phone, went to the Ohio Notary search page, and typed it in. Sharon Delgado. No results. I typed it again. Tried every spelling of that last name I could think of. No results. In the entire state of Ohio, there is no commissioned notary by that name. That perfect purple circle was stamped in the name of a human being who does not exist. Which means it wasn't only my signature that was forged. The witness to my signature had been manufactured too. Somebody had ordered a fake notary stamp made. And you know, a person can accidentally sign on the wrong line. A person does not accidentally own a counterfeit notary stamp. But the file wasn't finished with me. Clipped behind the power of attorney was another set of documents, fully drafted, not yet filed. A transfer deed, moving my house on Ashbury Lane into the name of a limited liability company called AL Holdings. I had never heard of that company. But I looked at the way the paperwork was structured, and I recognized the handwriting of a finance man the way you recognize an accent. Later, when we pulled the state's business registration records, it was all there in black and white. AL Holdings, formed 3 weeks after the day I brought Sam home. Registered agent, Derek Hayes. The house I spent 22 years paying off. The house where Ellie labeled every drawer, sitting in a paper funnel, waiting for that forged power of attorney to finish taking effect, so it could slide quietly into another man's name. I photocopied everything, paid the copy fees in loose change because my hands did not feel like managing anything more complicated, and walked out to the parking lot. And the moment I sat down in my car, my phone buzzed. An email from the law office handling Sam's guardianship, subject line in capital letters, urgent. I opened it. The office had just received notice from the Montgomery County Probate Court. A petition for emergency guardianship of an adult had been filed. The adult in question, Raymond Sokol. The petitioner, Derek Hayes. The grounds stated in the petition: severe cognitive decline following the loss of a spouse, demonstrated by erratic behavior, including bringing an unidentified minor child into the home and being unable to explain the child to his own family. The hearing was set for 6 weeks out. I read that email 3 times. Do you understand what it meant? If that petition succeeded, Derek would be handed control of everything I own by a judge. Legally. Respectably. No fake stamp required ever again. And there was one thing more, the thing that ran colder down my spine than any dollar amount. A man declared legally incompetent cannot serve as guardian to a child, which meant Sam would be taken. That little boy, who had already lost his mother and his grandmother, would now lose me, and my promise to Ellie would die in a courtroom, at the hands of her own son-in-law. Derek wasn't just aiming at the house anymore. He had taken the child himself, taken the most sacred promise of my life, and loaded it into the gun pointed back at me. I sat in my car in that county parking lot for 40 minutes. I did not pound the steering wheel. I did not call anyone. My hands lay flat on the wheel, and once again they did not shake. They just went still. But this time the stillness had something extra in it. It felt like 2 well-kept tools, laid out neat on a bench, waiting to be picked up. For 34 years, I sat on the right side of files like this one, dragging into the daylight men who believed they were smarter than the system. Derek Hayes thought he was handling a heartbroken old man. What he did not know was that he had just opened a case against the one man in this family who spent his entire life closing cases on people exactly like him. That night, after Sam went down, I sat out on the back porch and called Dale. He picked up on the second ring, same as he has for 29 years. I said, "Dale." Derek forged my signature. He's moving my house out from under me, and he just filed papers asking a court to rule that I've lost my mind. The other end of the line was quiet a long while. I could hear him set something metal down, probably a piece of one of those boat motors that will never run. Then Dale spoke, slow and careful. "Ray, I'm going to ask you one thing. That petition. Is Nicole's signature on it?" I looked down at the folder in my lap. The copy of the guardianship petition sat right on top. I had read page 1, page 2, page 3, and the last page, the signature page, I had turned to it and folded it back closed, 3 separate times that evening. I said, "I haven't looked at the signature page." Dale said, "Why not?" "I'll tell you the truth, old friend. Because if my daughter's name is on that page, then every other piece of paper in this folder turns into scrap. The house, the money, I can win all that back. That, I can't." Dale was quiet another moment. Then he said the thing I carried with me for the next 6 weeks. "Ray, in 29 years, I have watched you read 10,000 crooked documents and never flinch at one of them. If there is one page on this earth that scares you, that is the exact page you need to read. But not tonight," he said. "Tonight, you go to bed. The page isn't going anywhere." I took Dale's advice. I did not open that page that night, and I'll tell you right now, I did not open it for the next 6 weeks either. That page stayed at the bottom of the folder, folded in half, like a playing card lying face down, until one particular evening when my whole family would be sitting around one table and every card in the deck was going to get turned over. But first, I had to go find somebody. Somebody who knew how to take what I had discovered and build it into a machine. The somebody I went to find was named Evelyn Marsh. She is 54 years old, a litigation attorney specializing in elder law and estate disputes, with an office on the 3rd floor of an old red brick building in downtown Dayton. The man who recommended her was Tom, from the bank. Tom put it exactly one way. He said, "Ray, in my business, there are certain names where, the minute they show up on the letterhead, the other side suddenly discovers its manners. Marsh is one of those names." Evelyn Marsh's office has 3 framed diplomas on the wall and a signed baseball bat standing in the corner behind her chair. I did not ask about the bat. She did not explain it. I believe we understood each other from that minute forward. She read my folder for 15 minutes without saying one word, just tapping her index finger on the desk every so often. When she finished, she squared the papers into a neat stack, looked up, and spoke. "Mr. Sokol, I've been practicing 26 years, and I'm going to tell you two things. Thing one, there is no notary named Sharon Delgado, commissioned in the state of Ohio. I checked it twice more just now, sitting in front of you. Thing two, and this is the one that matters. A person can sign the wrong document by mistake. A person cannot own a counterfeit notary stamp by mistake. A stamp is intent. A stamp is planning. And planning, Mr. Sokol, is the thing prosecutors love most in this world." Then she asked me a question no lawyer had ever asked me. "You did fraud investigation for 34 years, is that right? Then I'm not going to talk to you like a client. I'm going to talk to you like a colleague. Can you handle that?" I said, "Ma'am, that is the kindest question anybody has asked me in 4 months." Evelyn Marsh's plan had 5 steps, and she numbered them the way a machinist numbers drill bits. Step 1. File an emergency revocation of the power of attorney with the county, immediately, and send freeze notices to the bank and to the recorder's office. The effect is instant. Every transaction resting on that document stops cold, and that transfer deed becomes dead paper that will never reach the county ledger. Step 2. And I believe this was the move that decided the whole game. Evelyn said, "That guardianship petition. The fastest way to kill it is not to argue with it. It's to make it ridiculous. You are going to volunteer for a full neuropsychological evaluation with an independent expert the courts around here already trust. Don't wait for the judge to order one. We file ours first. Mr. Sokol, nothing on this earth kills a confused old man file faster than an old man who scores 29 out of 30 on the cognitive exam and can name the last 3 probate judges of this county from memory." The expert was Dr. Anita Rao, a specialist in geriatric neuropsychology. 3 sessions, close to 7 hours altogether. Short-term memory, long-term memory, attention, executive function, financial capacity. I did all of it. And the result, forgive me for bragging a little because I did not get many high marks in my life, was 29 out of 30. In the comments section, Dr. Rao wrote one sentence that Evelyn later said belonged in a frame. The patient's orientation, memory, and executive function are above the standard for his age. If anything, the patient's memory for detail is unusually strong. When Dr. Rao handed me the report, she joked, "Mr. Sokol, you remember more than is strictly necessary." I said, "Doctor, I'm afraid a man 25 years younger than me is about to agree with you." Step 3. Subpoenas. Follow the paper. Trace the origin of that fake notary stamp. Pull the formation records on AL Holdings. Follow the money. And here is where I have to stop and tell you something. The clever crooks of this new century do not get caught because their plans are bad. They get caught because they shop online. That counterfeit notary stamp was a make-your-own kit, ordered over the internet, ordered on Derek Hayes' personal shopping account, shipped to Derek Hayes' office address, with a delivery confirmation, signed for by Derek Hayes. 34 years ago, running down a lead like that would have cost me 3 months of knocking on doors. Now it's one subpoena, and 4 days later, his entire purchase history is sitting on Evelyn's desk, still warm from the printer. Step 4. Draft the civil suit fraud and forgery, put it on the shelf, loaded, safety on. And Step 5. The step Evelyn called the real sentence. She put it this way: "Mr. Sokol, for a man in financial services, probation is a scratch on the paint. Professional death is the sentence. Derek Hayes lives on a license and on the trust of strangers. We are filing complaints with the Federal Securities Regulator and with the Ohio Division of Securities. If the allegations hold, he will be barred from the industry for life. And that bar is public. Anybody, from now until the day he dies, can type his name into the broker lookup and see it. As for the criminal referral, we hold it. We deliver it exactly once, when the chain of evidence is sealed with no gaps. Prosecutors do not like accusations. Prosecutors like gifts, wrapped, with a bow." I asked her how long she needed. She said, 6 weeks, which happens to land right on your hearing date. "And Mr. Sokol, during those 6 weeks, I need you to do the one job that is harder than all the others put together. I need you to be boring. Keep fishing with your friend Dale. Keep driving that boy to school. Go to the family dinners if you're invited. Smile. Compliment the ribs. You did a certain job for 34 years. Do that job. Stay quiet. And write things down. I said, "Ma'am, I thought you'd never ask." Now I have to tell you about one particular evening inside those 6 weeks. The evening that changed everything, in a way no lawyer and no 5-step plan ever could. While the Derek matter was moving, Sam's guardianship case was still running at a different office, a family law firm that Ellie, it turned out, had quietly been working with before she passed. One Thursday afternoon, the old attorney over there called and asked me to come in. Said he had something that needed to be handed over in person. He set a thick paper envelope on the desk, sealed, the edges a little worn. He said, "Mr. Sokol, your wife left this in my keeping at the end of February, 2 weeks before she passed, along with a written instruction. The instruction says this envelope is to be given to you only if one of two things happens. 1. Somebody in the family questions who Sam is. 2. Somebody questions the soundness of your mind." I looked at him. He looked back at me and added, very quietly, "Sir, based on what I have seen come through this file, it appears both conditions have now been met." I picked up the envelope, and the moment I turned it over, my heart caught somewhere high up in my chest. There, on the front of the envelope, in that slanted, tilting handwriting I had been reading for 41 years on every box, every spice jar, every phone cord in my house, Ellie had written one line. For the day they ask about Sam, she knew. Lying in that bed, counting out the last weeks of her life, my wife had looked clean through time and seen this day coming, seen the questions. And she hadn't just seen it coming. She had prepared the answer, sealed it, deposited it with a lawyer, and attached release conditions to it like a clause in a contract. That night, after Sam was good and asleep, I sat down at the kitchen table, under the same light Ellie sat under for 41 years writing out labels, and I opened the envelope. I am not going to tell you what was inside. Not yet. And not because I'm teasing you. Because inside the envelope there was a small instruction card, and the first line of that card said this: "Ray, read it all, then put it away. What's in here is not for you to use for yourself. It is for the whole family, on the one evening when the whole family is sitting in the same room. You will know that evening when it comes." That was my Ellie. Even from the other side, still telling me which item goes with which occasion, I will tell you just one thing. I read every piece of what was in that envelope, folded it all back up, locked it in the safe, and then I sat alone in my kitchen until almost 3 in the morning. And for the first time since March, I cried. Not from grief. I cried from relief. Because it turned out that for 4 months, through the loneliest fight of my life, I had never once been fighting alone. Somebody had walked out ahead of me and cleared the road before the war even started. The 6 boring weeks went by exactly as ordered. I went fishing with Dale twice. No fish were seriously endangered. I drove Sam to school every morning and picked him up every afternoon. The boy started telling me about his day on the ride home. 1 sentence at first, then 3. Then one afternoon he talked the entire way home about the classroom caterpillar, finally spinning its cocoon. And then, one morning in the middle of August, a tiny thing happened. So tiny I doubt anybody on earth would have noticed it but me. And to me, it weighed as much as every subpoena Evelyn ever filed, put together. Sam came down to breakfast without the dinosaur backpack. 4 months, that backpack had been attached to that child like a body part. He ate dinner hugging it. He watched cartoons hugging it. He slept with it next to his pillow. I never once asked what was inside, but I understood what that backpack was. It was his exit plan, the life preserver of a little boy who had lost too much, too fast, and did not believe anymore that any place was permanent. And that morning, the life preserver stayed upstairs. The boy came down the steps empty-handed, sat at the table, and complained that my scrambled eggs were a little salty. I turned toward the stove and pretended to look for something, because a 66-year-old man should not let a child see him cry into the breakfast. As for Nicole, in those entire 6 weeks, she sent me exactly 1 text, 4 words. "How are you, Dad?" No question mark at the end, as if she had typed the question mark and then deleted it. I wrote back, "I'm fine. I miss you." She didn't answer. but I know my daughter. That four-word text was a door left open a crack. The problem was that standing between me and that door was a financial advisor with a counterfeit stamp. Then the 6th week arrived, and on Wednesday evening, 3 days before the hearing, my phone rang. It was Nicole. Her voice was strung tight as a wire. She said, "Dad, Saturday night, you're coming to our house. The whole family needs to talk. Brian's flying in." She paused a moment. "And Dad, don't bring the boy." I stood in my kitchen, looking at the calendar on the wall, where the hearing date sat circled in red ink, 4 days past that Saturday. And I understood immediately, exactly, what this was. This was Derek's endgame, a family meeting, a soft ambush, everybody seated, enough pressure in the room, enough tears, until the old man volunteers to sign something. Nice and civilized, no courtroom necessary, because everybody here just loves you, Dad. He wanted a family meeting. "Fine," I said. "All right, sweetheart. I'll be there Saturday." After I hung up, I opened the safe, looked at Ellie's envelope for a moment, and said, quietly, to the empty kitchen, "You were right, Han. I know the evening now. It's here." Saturday afternoon, I dropped Sam off at Dale's place. Dale was waiting at the garage door with 2 ball caps, one big, one small. He said to Sam, "All right, kid, you and me have got a mission of national importance tonight. We are going to fix the boat that has never floated." Sam asked. "If we fix it, will it float?" Dale said, "No guarantees, but it's about the journey." Then he looked over the top of the boy's head, looked at me, and said 3 words, "Go get it." I pulled up to Nicole's house at 7 o'clock. In the trunk was the blue folder, arranged by Evelyn in proper evidentiary order. And on the passenger seat, writing by itself, was Ellie's envelope. Brian's rental car from the airport was already in the driveway. The living room lights were on. I sat in my car 1 more minute and laid my hands flat on the wheel one last time. Still steady. Good. Nicole opened the door. Her eyes were red. The kind of red that belongs to somebody who has been crying since mid-afternoon and has tried to wash it away twice. She stepped aside to let me into the entryway, and the moment I moved toward the living room, she circled ahead of me and planted herself in the middle of the doorway, both arms stretched wide. And she said the sentence you heard at the beginning of this video. "Dad, you are not taking one more step until you tell this family who that boy is. He's yours, isn't he? You cheated on Mom." Her voice cracked on the word Mom. "And I have to be honest with you about something. For 4 months I had pictured that moment hundreds of times, and every single time I imagined I would feel anger. But standing there, watching my own daughter spread her arms to block her father like he was a dangerous stranger, I did not feel anger. I felt a sorrow that nearly bent me in half, because I could see exactly what was standing behind that rage. A girl who lost her mother. A girl who looks at a phone every night at 8 o'clock that does not ring anymore. A girl whose own husband had spent 4 months pouring it into her ear, drop by drop, that the father she trusted her whole life had betrayed the mother she loved most in this world. Nicole's anger was not Nicole's fault. That anger was a construction project, and the contractor was sitting right over there, at the dining room table. I looked past my daughter's shoulder. Derek sat at the head of the table, back straight, his face arranged into precisely the correct dosage of sadness. Brian sat along the side, jaw tight, hands knotted together, and on the table I saw it. A stack of printed documents, neatly clipped, positioned squarely in front of the one empty chair. Mine. Next to the stack lay a pen, set at a tidy 45-degree angle, like a furniture ad. He had printed the papers in advance. He had staged the pen. This boy had prepared everything down to the pen. I looked back at my daughter, and I spoke slowly, loud enough for the whole room. "Are you finished, sweetheart? Because all I'm asking this family for is 11 minutes. 11 minutes, and I will tell you everything. And when I'm done, if you still want to put me out of this house, I will walk out that door on my own, and I will never make you open it for me again." From the table, Brian said, "Let him talk, Nick." Nicole lowered her arms. I walked in, but I did not sit in the chair with the papers and the pen. I stood at the opposite end of the table, facing Derek, set the blue folder down, and laid Ellie's envelope on top of it, writing side down. Not yet, I said. Before I answer the question about Sam, you all need to see something first. Because these two things, it turns out, are one thing. And I opened the folder, and I did exactly what I had done my whole working life in the conference rooms of an insurance company. I presented the evidence, one document at a time, in order. No extra commentary. Document 1. A copy of a full power of attorney, dated April 11th, granting Derek Hayes complete authority over my banking, my real estate, and my medical decisions. I never signed this document. The letter R in my name, my whole life. The pen rests twice. This R rests once. And here is the report of an independent handwriting examiner, 11 pages, saying the same thing in the professional language. Document 2. The notary seal on that power of attorney belongs to a Sharon Delgado. This is the printed search result from the Ohio Secretary of State. There is no notary by that name commissioned anywhere in this state. The witness to my signature is a person who does not exist. Document 3. And I apologize in advance, because this one is a little rude. This is a purchase history, produced under subpoena. A make-your-own notary stamp kit, ordered online on April 2nd, on the personal account of Derek Hayes, shipped to the office address of Derek Hayes, delivery signed for by Derek Hayes. Document 4. A transfer deed, drafted and ready, moving my house on Ashbury Lane into a company called AL Holdings. And here are the state business records. That company was formed 3 weeks after Sam came home. Registered agent, Derek Hayes. Document 5. A petition for emergency guardianship over Raymond Sokol, which is to say, a request that a court declare me incompetent. Petitioner, Derek Hayes. Hearing date, this coming Wednesday. I set the last page down and looked up. The room had gone so quiet you could hear the refrigerator running in the kitchen. Nicole stood frozen against the wall, her eyes jumping back and forth between the stack of paper and her husband. Brian picked up the notary search printout and read it a second time, the muscles working in his jaw. And Derek, I will give the man this much. He has good nerves. He let out a long breath, the patient breath of a younger man dealing with an old one, and he spoke, and his voice was still smooth. Dad, I know how this looks, but hear me out. Everything I did to protect this family's assets. Think it through. Mom passes, you're devastated, and then you bring an unidentified child into the house. What if his mother surfaces? Relatives? Lawsuits? Claims on the estate? I had to move quickly to ring-fence the assets. I do this for a living. I know how these things go. I said, so you forged my signature. He shifted down into second gear, voice lower, warmer. Dad, I'm going to say something, and I hope you won't take it hard. You are not the man you were before March. Everyone at this table can see it. You forget dates. You mix up days. You're guarding some secret you won't share with your own children. What I did out of concern for you. And then he said the third thing. The thing I had been waiting for him to say, because men like him always arrive at this sentence. Someday, you're going to thank me. I nodded slowly. Then I reached into the folder, drew out the final document, and laid it on top of everything. Derek, you just told this family that I've lost my grip. This is a complete neuropsychological evaluation. 7 hours, 3 sessions, conducted by Dr. Anita Rao, a specialist recognized by the courts of this county, 29 out of 30. And let me read you the closing line. The patient's memory for detail is unusually strong. I looked him dead in the eye. I'm afraid the doctor is right, son. My memory is unusually strong. I remember every document. I remember every date. And I remember, word for word, the phone call you made in the garage on the 4th of July. Would you like me to repeat, for the whole family, the sentence about how, with old people, there is always a process for that? For the first time in 9 years, I watched Derek Hayes' face stop working. It didn't go pale. It didn't flush. It just went still. The stillness of a machine that has had its power cord pulled. The same stillness I had felt in my own hands in that parking lot. Now it had moved to his face. And believe me, it looked better on me. Nicole lowered herself into a chair, very slowly, like her knees had reached the end of their warranty. She looked at her husband, and when she spoke, her voice was small in a way that was frightening. Tonight was your idea. The family meeting was your idea. You printed those papers. You set out that pen. You knew before Dad ever walked in that tonight was supposed to end with him signing something. Derek said, "You wanted answers too." And Nicole said the thing that I believe was sharper than anything in my folder. I wanted answers. You wanted the house. Don't you ever mix those two things together again? Brian stood up. He didn't say a word. He just walked around the table, slow and deliberate, and took up a position directly beside me, shoulder to shoulder. 33 years, my quiet son has never once managed to get the words, "I'm sorry, Dad," out in one piece. He didn't need to. In my family, where a man chooses to stand is a language. Then Nicole turned to me. The tears had come all the way down now, but she was fighting to hold her voice. And she asked, and this time the question was not a knife anymore. It was an open wound. "Dad, then who is Sam? Who is he?" And there it was. The evening Ellie promised I would recognize when it came. I turned the envelope over, writing side up, and slid it gently into the middle of the table. I did not have to say a single word. I watched the exact moment my daughter recognized the handwriting. Her hand came up over her mouth, and from behind that hand came a sound that was half a word and half a sob. "Mom," I spoke, and I worked to keep my voice flat, because if I broke, the whole room was going to break with me. For 4 months, this family has asked me who Sam is. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, because I made a promise to someone. Tonight I'm going to tell you, but I won't tell it as well as she does, so I'll only tell the beginning. The rest, she is going to tell you herself. And I told them about a 19-year-old girl named Eleanor in the spring of 1981, unmarried and pregnant in a family, and a time that did not forgive such things, who had to place her newborn daughter with another family 2 years before she ever met me. About how she carried that inside her for more than 4 decades, including from me. About a day 2.5 years ago, when a woman named Kayla, 45 years old, took one of those mail-in ancestry tests and discovered that her birth mother was living 2 hours up the interstate. About the Saturday mornings once a month, the long trips to the farmer's market, when Ellie came home with that little lamp lit behind her eyes. She wasn't going to any market. She was going to see her daughter and her grandson, a brown-haired little boy who loved dinosaurs. About the car accident in January on Interstate 75 that took Kayla when Sam was 7 years old and knocked Ellie down in a way I had blamed, at the time, on the cancer getting worse. About the last night in the hospice room, when she made me promise 2 things. First, bring Sam home and raise him, because his birth father was long gone, and the only other family he had was one elderly grandmother down in Tennessee, who was herself petitioning for custody. And second, tell no one, not one soul, who the boy was, until the court finalized the guardianship, because one wrong rumor, one careless sentence spoken while that case was still open, and somebody could use this family's own words to take that child away. I looked at Nicole, and I gave her the ending. Your mother said it to me like this: let them be angry at you. You can carry that. He can't. So you asked me, sweetheart, whether Sam is my son from an affair. No, he is your mother's own grandson. He is her blood. He is the only piece of your mother still growing in this world. And for 4 months, while this family suspected me of betraying her, the only thing I was doing was keeping my last promise to her. Nobody in that room was sitting up straight anymore. Brian had turned his face away. Nicole was crying without sound, both shoulders shaking, but the envelope was not finished. Inside it, there was one more thing, a small memory card, and beside it Ellie's instruction card, which read, "Play this for everyone. It runs 11 minutes. Do not skip ahead." I plugged the card into Nicole's laptop, set it in the middle of the table, and pressed play. And there on the screen was Ellie's face, recorded in our living room 2 weeks before the end. Thin, a scarf wrapped around her head, but the eyes bright, and the mouth already curling at the corner the way it did when she was about to get somebody. She looked straight into the camera, and the first sentence out of her was this: "If you all are watching this, it means somebody has been asking the wrong question about my husband." 11 minutes. She told them everything. Kayla, Sam, why the secret had to hold. She held documents up to the camera one at a time. The DNA results, the lawyer's paperwork, so that no one on this earth could argue with a single line of it. She said, clearly and slowly, that her ray was sharper than she was, and if anybody claimed otherwise, that person was either mistaken or needed money. Around the 10-minute mark, she charged Nicole and Brian to love that boy, because he was their own blood cousin, and because children are never guilty of anything the grown-ups do. And then, in the last seconds, Ellie paused. She looked into the camera a beat longer, and she said, "Derek, I saved one sentence just for you. I was a nurse for 30 years, honey. I have seen a lot of people up close. That house is not your retirement plan. Don't make me write." The screen went dark. My wife, lying in a hospital bed with a few weeks left on this earth, had read her own son-in-law that clearly. She had no evidence. She had 30 years of looking at people. And she had prepared for this exact evening, as carefully as she labeled a box, before a single one of us knew there was ever going to be an evening like this. Nobody in that room could speak for about a minute. Derek sat staring at the dark screen, and on his face, for the first time, I saw something genuine, not remorse. I won't hand him that word for free. It was fear. The fear of a man who has just understood that he was seen through before he ever made his first move, by a person he can never talk his way around again, because she is not here to listen. And then I did the last piece of business of the evening. From the very bottom of the folder, I drew out the page folded in half. The face-down card. The signature page of the guardianship petition. The page I had not been able to look at for 6 weeks, because I was afraid of finding my daughter's name on it. I unfolded it, for the first time, right there at the table, in front of everyone, and I looked down. There was one signature on that page. One, Derek Hayes. Nicole's name was not there. I slid the page across the table to my daughter, and I said, "For 6 weeks I couldn't look at this page. Because the house, the money, a man can win those back. But if your name had been on this page, I'd have lost something no court on this earth can give back. Tonight is the first time I've looked. And I want you to know something, sweetheart. Even before I looked, in my heart, you never signed it." Nicole took that piece of paper in both hands. And that exact moment, is when my daughter finally came apart. Not when she heard about Sam, not even during her mother's video. It was holding the piece of paper that proved her father, the man she had blocked at the door, the man she had accused of betrayal, had been more afraid of losing his faith in her than of losing the roof over his head. I gathered up the folder. I put Ellie's envelope in the inside pocket of my jacket, against my chest. And before I left, I set exactly one item back down on that table, a copy of Dr. Rao's evaluation. I said, "That stays here, in case anybody in this house still has questions." Then I looked at Derek one last time. He was still sitting in the same spot, surrounded by his pre-printed papers and his pen at its tidy 45 degrees. And I said the only sentence of the whole evening that I allowed myself to say off script. "Derek, you told somebody on the phone that with old people, there is always a process. You were right, son. There is a process. It starts Monday morning." I walked to my car, and exactly like that night, 4 months earlier, exactly like the beginning of this whole story, I made a phone call before I ever started the engine. This time, it was to Evelyn Marsh. I said, "Mrs. Marsh, is the gift wrapped?" She said, "It's been wrapped since Thursday." I said, "Then Monday morning we give it to the prosecutor." Now let me ask you something. You, the person listening to this, if it were you, if someone in your own family forged your name, lined up your house, asked a court to declare you incompetent, and then sat across a table from you and said, "Someday you're going to thank me," what would you do with your 11 minutes? Write it down below. I read every one, and I answer more of them than you might think. The rest of it did not happen in anybody's living room. It happened exactly the way Evelyn Marsh promised it would. On paper, under real stamps, behind office doors that close very softly. The guardianship petition was withdrawn 3 days before the hearing, and it wasn't Derek who pulled it. It was his own attorney, who withdrew from the case first, the moment he received a copy of our evidence file. Let me translate that for you. In the legal world, when a lawyer abandons his own client mid-voyage, that ship is not leaning. That ship is already sitting on the bottom. On the criminal side, Derek was charged under Ohio law with forgery and with identity fraud. He pleaded guilty to one count under an agreement and received 4 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and an order of restitution covering my legal costs, $61,000. Not 1 day behind bars. Now, I know some of you hearing that are thinking it isn't enough. I understand. But stay with me for the next part, and then you can decide for yourself where the real sentence landed. The wealth management firm terminated Derek 6 days after the subpoena arrived, and 4 months after that, the federal securities regulator handed down its decision, barred from the industry, for life. And that bar is public. Right now, today, anybody on this earth, a client, an employer, a curious neighbor, can type the name Derek Hayes into the broker lookup website, and the first word that comes up is a single word, in capital letters. Barred. Permanently. No footnote. No asterisk. For a man who spent his whole life trading on the credentials printed under his name, that is the sentence. Probation runs out in 4 years. That word in capital letters follows him to the grave. And the debt pit down in Tennessee, the pit that gave birth to all of it. That autumn, the bank foreclosed on all 3 Gatlinburg cabins. The hole Derek meant to fill with my house circled back around and swallowed everything with his own name on it instead. I felt no joy when I heard, just a tired kind of rightness. A counterfeit stamp, a petition smearing his own father-in-law, a family very nearly burned to the ground, and in the end, none of it saved the one thing he was trying to save. That kind of wrong doesn't even get the consolation prize of working. Nicole filed for divorce in October. She didn't ask my opinion, and she didn't need a pep talk. She simply informed me after the papers were in a sentence that was pure Nicole. She said, "Dad, I went back and graded all 9 years. He doesn't pass. As for my daughter and me, we healed the way Dr. Rao once described the human brain healing, not with one big repair. With 1,000 small connections, growing back a few every day." The first text Nicole sent me after that night was 6 words. "What does Sam like to eat Saturday?" She didn't say she was sorry. She asked about the boy's favorite food. For Nicole, that is an apology, and it happens to be my favorite kind, the kind that comes with a casserole dish. From then on, every Tuesday, she picked Sam up after school, and Emma and Jack started calling Sam their cousin before the adults ever finished discussing what he should be called. Children do family arithmetic faster than any court. Brian flew home twice more that fall, for no occasion at all, and his Sunday calls, I've timed them, I'm not ashamed to say it, now run about 19 minutes. For my Brian, those 8 extra minutes are the equivalent of a love letter. And Sam. In November, the court finalized the guardianship. His grandmother down in Tennessee withdrew her competing petition in exchange for visits twice a year, and I said yes before the lawyer finished the sentence. People asked me how I could agree so easily, seeing as that woman once stood on the other side of a courtroom from me. I'll tell you what I told them. That boy has lost his mother and lost his grandma Ellie. He doesn't need to win against anybody else. He needs as many people left on this earth who love him as he can get, including the ones who used to sit at the other table. And this February, at the Montgomery County Courthouse, there was an adoption ceremony. The judge was a silver-haired woman who has been on that bench 30 years, and following the tradition of the only kind of hearing where every person walks out smiling, she let Sam bang the gavel to close the proceedings. He banged it 3 times, good and loud, then looked up and asked, "Can I do it more?" The whole courtroom laughed. The judge said, "Today, you can. Go ahead, son." He banged it twice more. 5 hits of the gavel. I stood there, a 66-year-old man in the best suit he owns, and I thought, Ellie, can you hear that, hon? It's done. Case closed. It's a June evening now, a little more than a year past all of it. And I want to end this story with 3 pictures. Just 3. The first picture is a door. For half a year, a man tried every way he knew to take the door of my house. Tonight I am standing in that exact doorway, the back door, holding a mug of tea gone half cold, looking out at the yard. The door is still mine. But I'll tell you the truth. The thought that comforts me most is not that I kept it. It's that every evening now, people I love come in and out through it, and not one of them has to knock. The second picture is out in that yard. Nicole and Sam are catching fireflies. The two of them are crouched and creeping through the grass like the two least talented burglars in the state of Ohio. And every so often there's a whoop when one of those little lights ends up in the jar. And that glass jar, Nicole pulled it out of a cabinet in my garage, and on the side of it there is still one old label, in that slanted, tilting handwriting, corks and rubber bands. My wife labeled everything in this house. The longer I live, the more I believe she wasn't just labeling objects. She was labeling the future and filing it away in drawers so the people left behind could keep opening things and finding exactly what they needed. Up on the porch, Dale is bent over a boat motor in pieces. The boat still has never floated, and I have begun to suspect he doesn't want it to float, because a floating boat would cost him his excuse to come over every week. In the kitchen, the tablet is propped in the corner on a video call with Brian in Denver. I glanced at the clock. The call is 26 minutes in, a new family record, and the third picture, the one I saved for last, is upstairs. 9 o'clock, I went up to send Sam to brush his teeth. The boy was flat on the floor, arranging his plastic dinosaurs into two armies that appeared to be negotiating a peace treaty. And when I bent down to pick up a sock he'd flung by the bed, I saw something that stopped me flat for a couple of seconds. The dinosaur backpack. The one that had been attached to that boy like a body part. The life preserver he hugged through the funeral, through the silent dinners, through 4 months of grown-up weather. It was way back under the bed, shoved into the corner, wearing a thin coat of dust. Dust. You understand what I'm saying. The kind of dust that only settles on things nobody has needed in a long, long time. I asked him, keeping my voice as level as I know how, "Sam, your backpack, want me to hang it on the hook behind the door?" The boy didn't even look up from his dinosaurs. He said it light as air, like it was the most obvious fact in the world. "You don't have to, Grandpa. I'm not going anywhere." Grandpa. 1 year and 2 months, that boy called me Mr. Ray. That was the first time he ever called me Grandpa. He didn't even know he'd said it. He was busy making two dinosaurs shake hands, and I stood in the middle of that room, holding one small sock, and had to clear my throat twice before I could get out. "Okay then. Teeth, then bed, buddy." I pulled his door shut and stood in the hallway a while, and I thought about my life's work. For 34 years, my job was proving that paper lies. I spent a whole career among forged signatures, counterfeit stamps, files built for the purpose of taking what belongs to somebody else. And then, at the far end of my life, it was my own wife who taught me the lesson running the other direction. That with those very same tools, a sheet of paper, a line of handwriting, a sealed envelope, a person can leave behind the truth, can leave behind protection, can leave behind a home for a little boy she only got to hold a few dozen times. A crooked man needed a custom-ordered stamp kit, and he still lost. Ellie needed one pen, one envelope, and 11 minutes of looking straight into a camera. It turns out there are things people write with love, and there is no counterfeit stamp on this earth that can forge them. Good night, Ellie. The boy is home, and this time, nobody on earth is taking him anywhere. If you stayed with me all the way to the end, thank you for sitting with my family through this story. Tell me something in the comments. In your family, who is your Ellie? The quiet one who labels everything ahead of time so the people left behind can find what they need. I believe every family has one, and if you'd like to hear more stories like this one, well, you know what to do.